The biggest thing that has happened to India is that India today has S-400 air defense system from Russia. Pakistan will not be able to fly a plane anywhere in the vicinity of 400 kilometers from the Indian border, because the moment it does that, it will be retaliated by the S-400 system. Rafale fighters. The Rafale fighters don't need to even cross. They have that kind of weapons which they can launch an attack as going as much as 300 kilometers within Pakistan. When India has the capacity to take on China south of Pagong So on August 29, 31, 2020, do you think it's bothered about Pakistan? US is making a statement saying responsible. Fair enough. India is going to be responsible. Now let's see, was Pakistan responsible? Balakot gave you 5 years of peace. That's what Balakot is all about. The fact of the matter is, Pakistan right now is scared of the attack. And I'll tell you why it is scared of the attack.
After terrorists encouraged, trained, armed and guided across the border by Pakistan murdered 26 Indians in cold blood in Pahalgam, one Pakistan minister is tom-tomming 130 nuclear heads. The other is baying for blood, saying it will flow. Now, even a school kid understands using the nuclear heads in a war is not a real option. Until, of course, the ministers and other establishment figures of Pakistan, including the army chief Asim Munir, fascinated with the extremist interpretation of Islam, want all Pakistanis to blow themselves up in a last act of jihad. Now, assuming that's not the case, why would those who are supposed to speak responsibly are talking in this manner? Because just such threatening words won't stop India from putting an end to the constant threat of terrorism emanating from Pakistan. Hello and welcome, you're watching the Hindustan Times and I'm Abhishek Singh. To find out what's behind the Pak Minister's bluster, India's military options and more, I'm joined by my senior colleague, Mr. Shishir Gupta, Executive Editor, Hindustan Times. Good morning, sir. So, the statements made by Mr. Hanif Abbasi, a minister, Pakistani minister, and of course, Bilawal Bhutto. How do you take those statements? Very provocative.
The statements made by Hanif Abbasi, who happens to be the railway minister of Pakistan, and has nothing to do with either nuclear warheads or nuclear deployment, is absolutely fantasy. And he does not know what he's talking about. It is plain bluff and bluster. The statement made by Bilawal Bhutto, however, is basically coming out of his DNA. His maternal grandfather used to talk about anti-Hindu jihad way back when he was 15-year-old in 1943, when he wrote a letter to Muhammad Ali Jinnah, talking again about Prophet, about Kalma, and about whatever Asim Munir on April 16 said. His mother was the lady who talked about a 1,000-year war against India on Kashmir. She was the one who said, "Hum Jagmohan ko jag moh kar denge." And so the son is also doing the same thing. But what is actually happening is that all this is false bravado. It is basically statements to try and tell the world that, listen, if there is a war, I will use the nuclear warhead. That is what it is all about. Then you bring it to the great nuclear flashpoint theory, and then you say that if something happens over here, it is going to be nuclear war. Nothing of the sort is going to happen. This is plain bluff and buster. This is, the two politicians don't even know what they're talking about. And this is basically to somehow avoid a counter-terrorist operation that India will launch. Again, as I say, I do not know the timing and the date.
Right. And what was also interesting and perhaps consistent, like we saw the religious elements which Asim Munir talked about, were also present in the statement made by Abbasi. I mean, he talked about Baniyas behaving in a certain way, and it was perhaps also apparent in how Bilawal Bhutto was talking. So this element, this is very consistent right at the top of the establishment figures who ensure that somehow or the other they bring in Islam and the extremist interpretation of the religion. Fact of the matter is, there are most Muslims living in India very peacefully than there are in Pakistan.
See, these are the usual tropes that the Pakistanis use. And ultimately, it's all about political Islam. Using religion to propagate your politics, using religion to propagate your army. There's nothing more to it. I think we should not delve into this verbal war. We should look at as to what is happening on ground and what will happen on ground. They have played the first card. Now let's see what our response is going to be. And all this business of, giving all sorts of names and everything, one should not really be bothered about that, because these guys usually say this and it doesn't make a damn of a difference to anybody, right? Let's see what happens at a later stage, and then we can answer this question much better, or maybe they can answer this question much better.
Right. And a couple of more developments which have happened before we start talking about India's military options. What can India do perhaps differently from what it did in Balakot, etc. I quickly want to talk about what China said and what US said. China said that it is in favor of, a probe, and US said that it wants India and Pakistan to act responsibility. Now, something similar to this was responded to by Shashi Tharoor when he said that, you don't ask a murderer to investigate the murder that he has committed. He was, of course, talking about Pakistan and the probe. What do you think about China and America's statement in this case?
See, China has a vested interest in the game. China has invested something to the tune of over $50 billion in Pakistan in the CPEC corridor. China has a stake in Shaksgam Valley, which was illegally ceded to China in 1963 by Pakistan. So if anything happens, China's game in Pakistan goes awry. So that is why China is making a statement which is typically a response what the Pakistanis have said by talking about some sort of, international probe, right? So China has a vested interest, and that's why China does not want any military retaliation. US is making a statement saying responsible. Fair enough. India is going to be responsible. Now let's see, was Pakistan responsible when it did that? No, it was not.
Right.
So let me tell you very clearly, India is not going to ask anybody to do what it needs to do. And what it needs to do will be done.
Right. 6 planes from Turkey today landed in Pakistan. Reports are saying that these are carrying, arms and ammunitions. What do you make of Turkey's involvement in this?
See, Turkey is just a side picture. Turkey obviously is a close ally of Pakistan. Turkey may be providing ammunition for the armed drones, that is Bayraktar 1 and 2 that Pakistan uses. But these are basically, these are not really advanced drones. Okay, and considering that we have the skies covered, they'll be shot out of the sky. So this is not Armenia, this is not Iran, this is not Ukraine. Please, we have the airspace covered, and we know what's happening and where it is happening. Okay, so so Turkey, they can send the planes, they can send ammunition for the drones, they can send other ammunition also, fair enough. But then this is what Turkey was expected to do. And this is what maybe perhaps any other country would do, which is supposed to be an ally, or which is an ally of Pakistan.
Right. And what do you make of Pakistan threatening to pull back from Shimla agreement? I mean, because Pakistan in this case stands to lose quite a bit, because India at that point in time when the Shimla agreement was signed had given about 13,000 square kilometers of land to Pakistan because, as a part of the deal. Now, Pakistan stands to lose the most if Shimla agreement is rescinded, if Pakistan decides to pull back from it, because the LOC all of a sudden becomes, in this case, all of a sudden becomes but not existent, and India will be at liberty to cross it if it wants to for the kind of military options that we were talking about earlier.
This is all bluff and bluster.
Okay.
This is basically to somehow convince India that please do not attack us. Okay. This is all verbal diarrhea of Pakistanis. There is nothing more to it. Okay. If they want to withdraw out of Shimla agreement, please go ahead and do that. Right?
All right.
Let's be very clear on this. And because what you don't understand is what has changed. What has changed from Balakot to Pahalgam. And Pakistan knows it. Okay? So you have this misinformation that first comes out. That in Balakot, actually, Pakistan's air defense was much more integrated. There is this whole business that Pakistan actually attacked. Right? Listen, the fact of the matter is, India achieved its objective in Balakot. That is on February 26, 2019. It bombed the Jaish-e-Mohammed base, right, in Balakot. The fact of the matter is, there is evidence available within India, and I do not want to say it, within India to show the same.
Right.
There is evidence, radar picture available with the Indian Air Force to say that a Pakistani plane was shot down.
But do you think at any point in time, Air Force will, come out with those pictures, publicly share them?
Why should they do? Because why should they want to compromise their own air defense? Because there are other things also available in that.
Right.
Okay, it is not, the Air Force is not going to come out just because they want to please the media. They have the picture. A Pakistani plane, possibly a F-16, went down. And when they retaliated, what did they do? Nothing. The Indian air defense was handled by a fight controller sitting in Ambala by the name of squadron leader Minty Agarwal.
Okay.
If the Pakistani was so great, why did all the South African H2, H4 standoff bombs miss their target? Yes, we lost a plane, but we achieved our objective. Our objective was what? To decimate the Jaish-e-Mohammed camp at Balakot. That's what we did. So you can sort of, go tom-tomming around about, India losing a plane. Nonsense.
Right.
Okay.
So the objective was achieved.
The objective was achieved.
Yeah.
Listen, you bought peace for 20 years after 1971. India may have lost more planes in 1971, but it divided the country. Understand that?
Sure.
Balakot gave you 5 years of peace. That's what Balakot is all about. So, all this business of, this tutu meme, whatever is going on, this is all sort of, it's just a haze. The fact of the matter is, Pakistan right now is scared of the attack. And I'll tell you why it is scared of the attack.
Sure.
Okay. What has happened is that since 2019,
Which is since
Balakot, look at what is happening with Pakistan. So I will go into various elements of it. The biggest thing that has happened to India is that India today has S-400 air defense system from Russia. You know what it means? It means that Pakistan will not be able to fly a plane anywhere in the vicinity of 400 kilometers from the Indian border, because the moment it does that, it will be retaliated by the S-400 system, which has missiles which are capable of downing aerial platforms from 40 to 400 kilometers. The entire width of Pakistan is 1600 kilometers. So which means all the important bases, the F-16 bases, all are within its target range, first of all. And once you have air superiority, there is no question that Pakistan can do anything, first of all.
Sure.
Second thing, India has Rafale fighters. The Rafale fighters don't need to even cross. They have that kind of weapons which they can launch an attack as going as much as 300 kilometers within Pakistan. That's point 2. Point 3, India has, I do not want to sort of bring the nuclear dimension into it, but India has some 16 operational submarines. Do you know how many Pakistan has? 1, and that is still under trial.
Right.
Now, when Hanif Abbasi talks about nuclear dimension worth 30 warheads, India has 2 operational ballistic missile submarines which are already deployed.
And
So-
there is definitely a disparity between the number of ballistic missiles and the range of ballistic missiles and the kind of ballistic missile India has versus Pakistan.
Pakistan does not have any submarine launched nuclear missile.
Of course
So
not.
please, so let's not talk. This is like वो था शेख चिल्ली के हसीन सपने. This is not like that. I mean, India is on a different dimension. Do you understand when India has the capacity to take on China south of Pagong So on August 29, 31, 2020? Do you think it's bothered about Pakistan? So please understand the asymmetry of conventional war fighting capabilities. And then you will realize that all these people who are talking in Pakistan are actually scared. They do not know what's coming on to them. Now, they have started moving their infantry divisions from the western sector to the eastern sector. But their western sector is equally vulnerable. I mean, Balochistan is still under fire. So is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So, as I've been saying, Asim Munir didn't use his mind when he made that statement. And definitely, they did not, they're known for their, tactics, but they're very poor when they think in terms of strategy. So this Pahalgam was a tactic, but it's a very poor strategy, and you will see in the coming days.
We'll wait for India to exercise, the kind of lesson that it wants to impart on Pakistan in the aftermath of Pahalgam. And on that note, thank you so much, sir, for taking the time and talking to us.